My name is Lily Allen, and what I'm about to share changed my life forever. On February 12th, 2025, I died, for exactly 7 minutes and 46 seconds. What I experienced during that time completely transformed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and God. I wasn't just drifting in darkness. I crossed over to a place more real than anything I've ever known. And there, I met Jesus Christ. He spoke to me about a hidden power within the Black community, a power that has been suppressed for centuries. What he revealed was shocking, but the message I received wasn't just for me. It was meant for the world. That morning, February 12th, was cold. I remember waking up to my alarm blaring at 6:30 a.m. The sky outside was gray, and a light layer of snow covered the ground. For weeks, I had been feeling off, stressed, exhausted, and disconnected. But that day, I had an important presentation at work, so I had no choice but to push through. I went through my usual morning routine: coffee, a quick shower, and a rushed breakfast. But as I grabbed my coat, I felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't exactly pain, more like a tightness, a warning, like something was about to happen. I brushed it off as nerves and headed out. The drive was normal until I reached the intersection of Pine Street and Fifth Avenue. The light was green, so I kept going. And then I saw it. A red truck, speeding straight through the intersection. My heart leaped into my throat. There was no time to react. The impact was violent. Metal crunched, glass shattered, my body jerked. And then, nothing. No pain, no sound, no fear, just silence. My vision blurred, and suddenly I was floating. I saw my own body slumped over the steering wheel, blood dripping from my forehead. And that was just the beginning. I should have panicked. But instead, a deep, unshakable calm washed over me. Everything around me was crystal clear. I saw a man pull out his phone, frantically dialing for help. Paramedics rushed toward my car, pulling me out and laying me on the ground. Someone was performing CPR, shouting at me to breathe. But I felt disconnected, like I was watching it all happen from a distance. That's when I felt it. A gentle pull. An invisible force was guiding me upward, and I didn't resist. I couldn't even think about resisting. I just knew I was being taken somewhere. And somehow I understood that it wasn't Earth anymore. The moment I left my body, I knew this was something beyond explanation. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced. I felt weightless, floating in a space that wasn't really a place at all. There was no sky, no ground, just a soft, golden glow surrounding me. Below, I could still see my body lying on the pavement while the paramedics fought to save me. But I wasn't scared. I felt no pain, no fear, just peace, acceptance. My body no longer felt like mine. It was like watching a scene from someone else's life. Then, the pull came again. It was gentle, but firm, like an unseen hand leading me upward. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. My soul already knew where it was going. Suddenly, everything around me faded into darkness. But it wasn't scary. It was quiet, still, peaceful. Then, in the distance, I saw it, a light. Not just any light. It was alive. It pulsed with warmth, love, and energy. As I drifted closer, I felt it wrap around me, filling me with an indescribable sense of love. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. It wasn't just love. It was belonging. Peace. The feeling of finally being home. As I moved toward the light, a sound reached me. Not music as we know it, but something purer. It was harmony itself, like countless voices blending perfectly. It was more beautiful than anything I could ever describe. Tears streamed down my face. Except, I didn't have a face anymore. I had no physical body. Yet, I still felt everything, every emotion, raw and real. Then, the light shifted. A figure began to take shape within it. At first I thought it was an angel, but as the figure stepped closer, I realized it was him, Jesus Christ. He was tall, dressed in a glowing white robe that shimmered with light. His eyes, deep brown, yet endless, like galaxies swirling in eternity. And when he smiled at me, every fear, every sorrow, every regret simply faded away. He radiated power, but not in a way that was overwhelming. It was comforting. Safe. "Lily," he said, his voice strong yet gentle, carrying warmth. "There's something you need to know." I wanted to speak, but I didn't have to. He could hear me, my thoughts, my heart. He reached out, his hand, and as I took it, a flood of knowledge filled me. Visions flashed before my eyes. I knew I was about to learn something life-changing, something that would change everything. As soon as Jesus took my hand, everything around me dissolved into pure light. I felt myself being pulled through a tunnel, but not like any tunnel I had ever seen on Earth. It was made of swirling energy and radiant light, alive and pulsing with an indescribable force. I wasn't alone. I could sense the presence of others, beings of light, singing in perfect harmony. The tunnel seemed endless, yet I felt no fear. In fact, the deeper I went, the more connected I felt to something far greater than myself. Every part of my soul hummed with energy. Then I felt it. Love. Not just any love, but something pure, limitless, and all-encompassing. It wasn't just coming from Jesus. It was woven into the very fabric of existence itself. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up, and I found myself standing in what I can only describe as heaven. But it wasn't what I had imagined. No clouds, no golden gates. It was light. It was energy. Below me, lush green fields stretched as far as the eye could see, beneath skies shimmering with colors beyond human imagination. Flowers seemed to sing. Rivers of light flowed, not through the land, but through the very air. And at the heart of it all, there stood Jesus. He smiled warmly and said, "Come." I followed. As we walked, the very air around us pulsed with life. I could feel creation itself beneath my feet, like the heartbeat of the universe. Then Jesus stopped. He turned to me, his eyes filled with wisdom, and spoke. "Lily, there is something you need to understand, a truth that has been hidden for centuries." He reached out his hand again, and the moment I took it, visions flooded my mind. I saw ancient African tribes, shamans and healers standing in circles of radiant light. I saw black men and women singing, praying, and performing sacred rituals, their energy powerful and deeply connected to both the earth and the spirit. Then Jesus spoke again. The black people of this world were given a gift, a spiritual strength deeper than human understanding. This strength was meant to guide humanity into a great awakening. "It was taken from them," Jesus said. I saw the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, chains, whips, families torn apart. Yet even in their suffering, something remained unshaken. Jesus revealed how a deep spiritual strength had been passed down through generations, despite every attempt to erase it. They tried to bury this power, he told me, but now it's waking up. Then he showed me visions, black communities rising, reclaiming their spiritual heritage. I saw healers, prophets, and leaders stepping into their power, guiding the world into something new. With a knowing smile, Jesus said, "Tell them, it's time." When Jesus spoke to me about the hidden power within black people, his voice carried both urgency and love. His eyes locked onto mine, intense and unwavering, and I felt my whole body tremble. "Lily," he said, "what I'm about to show you has been buried for centuries, not by chance, but by deliberate oppression. But the time has come for it to be revealed. He reached out his hand. The moment I touched it, my mind overflowed with visions. I saw ancient Africa, lush, radiant, alive with spiritual energy. Men and women gathered in sacred circles beneath the stars, their voices rising in chants and prayers that pulsed through the earth. They weren't just practicing rituals, they were harnessing divine energy. The very ground beneath them glowed as they lifted their hands to the heavens. These people, Jesus said, had a deep connection with God, one that few others have ever known. They understood how to speak to the earth, heal with their hands, and listen to the voice of the Spirit. They were given a sacred gift, a gift of creation, intuition, and divine wisdom. But then, the vision changed. I saw ships crossing the ocean. I saw chains. I heard the crack of whips. I watched as families were torn apart, their names erased, their languages stolen, their spiritual traditions stripped away. Yet even in their suffering, I could still see their light. It wasn't gone, only buried. Jesus' voice softened. The enemy knew how powerful they were. That's why they were targeted. Their strength wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. And the world was afraid of what would happen if that power was ever unleashed. He showed me how systems were created to suppress this spiritual inheritance, how education, the economy, and even religion were all used to keep the Black community from realizing their true strength. He revealed how Christianity itself had been distorted, used as a weapon of control instead of a path to freedom. Jesus' eyes darkened. They used my name to justify their cruelty. They spread lies in my name. But I was never with them. I was with the ones who prayed in the fields. I was with the ones who whispered my name under the stars. Even after slavery ended, the oppression didn't. Segregation, discrimination, poverty. Each of these was designed to keep the Black community from reclaiming what was rightfully theirs, their spiritual inheritance. Jesus revealed to me how the criminal justice system, the economy, and even the media were being used to keep this power hidden from the world. But then, he gave me a gentle smile. The enemy didn't realize how strong these people truly are, he said. They endured. They survived. And now, their time has come. He showed me that this awakening had already begun. I saw young Black men and women stepping into roles of spiritual leadership, leading churches, organizing their communities, and reconnecting with the power of prayer and fasting. I saw a new generation refusing to accept the lies they had been told, choosing instead to embrace their true, divine identity. The chains are breaking, Jesus said. Not just physical chains, but mental and spiritual ones too. The power that was buried is rising once again. And the world isn't ready for the strength that's about to be revealed. After showing me the oppression, Jesus' voice softened. His eyes held warmth as he smiled at me. "Lily," he said, "do you want to see the truth about the power they tried to hide?" I nodded. In an instant, the vision shifted. I saw the lands of ancient Africa again, but this time they were alive with light and celebration. Men and women stood in circles, their hands lifted toward the sky. They weren't speaking words, but making sounds that carried an energy I could feel. These sounds, Jesus explained, aren't just words. They are frequencies. The people of this land knew how to shape creation itself through sound. Their voices carried a deep spiritual power. I watched as healers laid hands on the sick, and instantly they were healed. Prophets spoke, and the very earth responded. Plants blossomed, and animals gathered near, drawn by the energy. Jesus smiled. They understood the secrets of creation because they were directly connected to me, he said. He showed me how this power had been passed down through generations. Even when they were taken from their lands, the gift remained. It echoed in their music, the beat of the drums, the soul of the spirituals. It was in the prayers of grandmothers, covering their families with protection. It was in the resilience of leaders who stood up for justice. But then, Jesus showed me how this power had been buried, hidden beneath pain, oppression, and distraction. They were taught to forget, he said, but the power never left. It's still inside them. Then, he showed me the present day. I saw young men and women waking up, praying, fasting, and rediscovering the connection to God that had been hidden for so long. Jesus smiled. The awakening has already begun. I asked him why this gift had been hidden for so long. His face grew serious. Because the enemy feared it, he said. This power isn't just about strength, it's about spiritual leadership. Then he showed me something even deeper. The Black community was meant to be a guiding force, leading the world spiritually. Their ability to connect with God, to see beyond the physical, and to walk in faith was a divine gift. But the world wasn't ready for that kind of authority, Jesus said, so they tried to erase it. I saw how colonialism, slavery, and systemic oppression were deliberately designed to prevent this awakening. If they could keep these people focused on survival, Jesus said, they could keep them from discovering who they really are. Jesus smiled. They failed, he said. The awakening has begun. These people are rising in strength. The wisdom of their ancestors is returning. Suddenly I saw glimpses of the future, young Black leaders standing at the forefront of a powerful spiritual movement. I saw communities coming together through faith and prayer. I witnessed miracles, healing, deliverance, and breakthroughs unfolding before my eyes. This is why the enemy fought so hard to keep the truth hidden, Jesus continued. Because once they remember who they are, nothing will be able to stop them. After revealing why the power within the Black community had been suppressed for so long, Jesus showed me how it was now being restored. His eyes softened, and with a warm smile, he reached out his hand toward me once more. Lily, he said gently, what you're about to see is already happening. But this is just the beginning. In an instant, I was surrounded by brilliant light. The visions came fast, like flashes of truth being poured straight into my soul. I saw a young Black woman standing in a small room, her hands lifted in prayer. Her face glowed with divine radiance, her eyes closed as she prayed with deep conviction and power. The very air in the room seemed to shift, vibrating with an unseen energy. It was as if heaven itself was responding to her words. People entered the room sick, but walked out healed. Hearts hardened by years of pain softened in her presence. Then I saw a young Black man standing on a busy city street. He wasn't shouting or putting on a show, yet his words carried a weight, a presence that could be felt in the very atmosphere. People were drawn to him, not because of charm or charisma, but because of the power in his voice. It wasn't just human authority. It was something deeper, something spiritual. His words weren't just being heard, they were breaking chains, opening hearts, and awakening something long forgotten in those who listened. Then, in a voice both gentle and powerful, Jesus spoke. Do you see? The power is returning. What was buried is rising. They are remembering who they are. I saw churches filled with Black men and women, hands lifted in worship, their voices rising like a battle cry. But this wasn't just emotion, it was spiritual warfare. As they sang, I saw chains breaking in the unseen realm. Strongholds were crumbling, generational curses were being shattered. The light that had been dimmed for centuries was now burning brightly within them, like a fire that could never be put out. Then, Jesus showed me something else. The restoration of creativity. I saw black artists composing music, writing books, and painting breathtaking masterpieces, each creation carrying a divine power. Their art wasn't just for expression, it was prophetic. It was unlocking hearts, stirring souls, and leading people back to God. I saw healers at work, using natural remedies and ancient wisdom passed down through generations. I saw their hands placed on the sick, the wounded, and the broken, and I watched as both bodies and hearts were made whole. Jesus smiled and said, "This wisdom was never lost. It was simply kept safe, waiting for the right time to return." Then, I saw another restoration, the rebuilding of economic strength. Black-owned businesses were thriving. Black communities were becoming self-sufficient, no longer dependent on broken systems for survival. They were creating their own networks of trade, support, and education, lifting each other up and reclaiming what had always been theirs. Jesus' eyes burned with determination. The system that once kept them oppressed is collapsing beneath their feet. They are creating something new, something untouched by greed or control. This is the restoration of divine order. As the visions faded, Jesus turned to me with warmth in his gaze. But this restoration won't come without resistance. The enemy will try to stop it. That's why they must be ready. He took a step closer, his presence radiating light and peace. "Lily," he said gently, "there's something else you need to understand. For this power to be restored, unity is essential." Suddenly, images flooded my mind. I saw the Black community thriving, but also divided. I saw people separated by politics, religion, and generational differences. Arguments, misunderstandings, and deep wounds kept them apart. But then, I saw those divisions begin to heal. Small gatherings of people sitting together in prayer, speaking honestly, listening with open hearts. I saw men and women setting aside their pride, choosing understanding over conflict. Forgiveness was exchanged. Old wounds that had lasted for generations were finally mending. "This is the key," Jesus said. "The enemy has tried to divide them because he knows their strength is in unity. A single flame can be put out, but a wildfire cannot." I saw Black men and women standing together, hands clasped, eyes lifted toward the heavens, voices united in prayer. A wave of light surged through them, expanding outward, pushing back the darkness. And then, I saw a vision of the future. Black communities were at the forefront of a powerful global movement, bringing spiritual awakening to the world. I saw them praying over world leaders, bringing healing to nations through faith and wisdom. They stood boldly against corruption and greed, refusing to be controlled by the systems of the world. Jesus smiled. "They will be a light to the nations," he said, "but only if they stay united." Then, he showed me something that shook me to my core. I saw how the enemy would try to tear them apart. Media narratives spreading division, political leaders fueling conflict, even some religious voices planting seeds of doubt and confusion. The enemy will use deception, Jesus warned. He'll try to convince them they're too different, too broken, too damaged to stand together. But those are lies. Their strength comes from their shared identity, both as descendants of powerful ancestors and as children of God. And this unity wasn't just for them, it would reach far beyond race. People from all backgrounds were drawn to the spiritual leadership of the Black community. Their strength, resilience, and wisdom became a guiding light for those seeking truth. Jesus' voice carried authority. Tell them to let go of their pride and stand together in faith. Division is the enemy's weapon, but unity is God's. A gentle light flowed through her body, her breathing slowed, her tears stopped. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I forgive them." In that moment, the darkness around her vanished. Light filled the room. The weight she had carried in her heart for so long was lifted. Jesus spoke gently, yet firmly. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the key to unlocking true power. Then he showed me visions. Fathers returning to the children they had once abandoned, mothers and daughters embracing after years of silence, siblings exchanging words of apology and reconciliation. The heavy burden that had weighed on the Black community for generations was being lifted, not by revenge, but by forgiveness. Jesus' voice was filled with love. "Tell them," he said, "forgiveness doesn't mean excusing what was done to them, but it frees them from the pain of carrying that hurt. Only through forgiveness can they step fully into their power." Then his expression became serious. "Lily, you must tell them. They need to prepare now." Suddenly I saw a wave of darkness approaching. It wasn't physical, it was spiritual. The enemy was furious. The awakening had begun, and darkness was preparing to strike back. But then I saw something else, a shield of light surrounding the Black community. It wasn't weak, it was unbreakable. This shield wasn't built on wealth or political power. It was built on faith, unity, and obedience to God. "Tell them," Jesus said, "to strengthen their faith, to study my word, to fast and pray, to build communities of trust and accountability, to prepare for resistance, not with fear, but with confidence." He stepped closer, his eyes burning with divine authority. "Tell them to rise." I saw young Black men and women standing tall, their eyes shining with purpose. I saw churches overflowing with people hungry for truth. I saw healing services where the sick were miraculously restored. I saw leaders stepping into positions of influence, not because of politics, but because of spiritual strength. "This is their moment," Jesus said, "but they must be ready." After Jesus gave me my call to action, he looked at me and said, "Lily, now I will show you what will happen if they rise." His eyes held both power and deep compassion as he lifted his hand. In an instant, everything around me shifted. I was no longer standing beside Jesus. I was above the earth, looking down. I saw entire cities, nations, and continents, but they weren't as they are today. They had changed. The skies were clearer. The air carried a deep sense of peace. The energy of the planet felt lighter, calmer, and perfectly in balance. There was no fear, no conflict, only peace. Then I saw them. Black men and women standing at the forefront of this new world. They weren't leading with force or control, but with wisdom, grace, and spiritual authority. Their presence alone carried weight. They didn't need to shout to be heard. People simply listened. I saw a woman standing on a stage, speaking to thousands. She wasn't a politician or a celebrity. She was a spiritual leader. Her words held power because they came from truth, not human wisdom, but divine revelation. The crowd hung on her every word. I watched as people fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces, experiencing deep spiritual breakthroughs. Then I saw a young Black man in a government office. He wasn't there for politics. He was there to bring truth and righteousness. People were drawn to his integrity. They sought his counsel, not because of his title, but because of the spiritual authority he carried. He didn't make decisions based on strategy alone, but through prayer and divine guidance. And because of that, healing swept across the nation. I saw miracles on a massive scale. Hospitals emptied, not because of medicine, but because people were being healed supernaturally through the laying on of hands. Once broken communities were now thriving. Schools were filled with children, not just learning academics, but being taught spiritual truths. And through it all, I heard Jesus' voice, gentle yet powerful. The restoration won't be partial, it will be complete. Then I saw something even greater. I witnessed a global awakening. Nations all over the world started following the example set by the Black community. Spiritual leaders from every continent came together in unity. I saw white leaders, Asian leaders, indigenous leaders, people from all backgrounds, standing alongside Black leaders. But it was the Black leaders who carried the torch. They weren't leading from a place of dominance, but from a deep well of spiritual strength and humility. Then I saw miracles. The blind regained their sight. People were healed from diseases that doctors couldn't explain. Financial systems shifted as communities created their own ways of thriving, independent of corrupt governments. Jesus smiled. Do you see, Lily? This is the future that awaits them, if they choose to embrace it. But then his expression grew serious. Now, I must show you what happens if they don't. The light around me dimmed. Suddenly, another vision unfolded before my eyes. This time, it was chaos. I saw riots in the streets, governments crumbling, nations consumed by conflict. A new global system was rising, one that promised peace but delivered control. People lined up to receive digital implants, trading their freedom for security. And I saw the Black community under attack, not physically but spiritually. They were being drawn into division and confusion. The power they carried was still there, but it was being misused, distorted, and corrupted. Jesus' voice was firm. This is what the enemy wants. If they do not rise in unity, their division will be exploited, and their power will be stolen. Then the vision faded. I found myself standing before Jesus once again. His gaze was deep and unwavering. Tell them, he said. They must choose. If they remain divided, destruction will follow. But if they stand united, they will find victory.